And because of his bravery in the Civil War, he left the Civil War with the rank of major. So he fought in the Battle of Antietam. Surviving that was kind of a big deal. And after his display of bravery in the Civil War, he left the Civil War with the rank of major. And in 1871, he married Ida Saxton. 1871, he married Ida Saxton. Political career began when he was elected to the House of Representatives from Ohio in 1876. He entered politics by being elected to the House of Representatives from Ohio in 1876. And he served quite a few terms. How long are a congressman's terms? Anybody know? How many years? 2. And he served from 1876 until 1891. So he was re-elected many times. And the only reason he left the House of Representatives in 1891 is he was elected governor of Ohio. So he served in the House of Representatives from 1876 to 1891, was re-elected several times, and then in 1891 he was elected governor of Ohio. Now, I didn't mention this at the time, but in the election of 1892, when Benjamin Harrison got the nomination, he actually was a serious presidential candidate in that election, but he lost the nomination. So he was being looked at as a possible presidential candidate before he was ever nominated for his first election. So McKinley was a serious presidential candidate in the election of 1892, but he lost the presidential nomination to Benjamin Harrison. We all know that he was elected president in 1896 and in 1900. So he was a two-termer, that's what they call him. You get elected to 2 terms, you're a two-termer. And on September 6th of 1901, he was in Buffalo, New York for a speaking engagement. September 6th, 1901, he was in Buffalo, New York for a speaking engagement. Well, as he reached out his hand to shake hands with a supposed supporter, an estranged man shot him, hiding a concealed revolver in a handkerchief in his right hand. So as McKinley is reaching out to shake hands with what he thought was a supposed supporter, an estranged man who was hiding a concealed revolver in his right hand shot McKinley twice. So on September 6, 1901, as President William McKinley was in Buffalo, New York at a speaking engagement, he reached out to shake hands with a supposed supporter, and an estranged man hiding a concealed revolver in a handkerchief in his right hand shot McKinley twice. McKinley was immediately rushed to a hospital for emergency surgery. He was immediately rushed to a local hospital for emergency surgery. At first it looked like he would recover from his wounds, but unfortunately on September 14th he died, 8 days after his shooting. So it looked like he may survive, but unfortunately medicine isn't like it is today, and 8 days later on September 14th, 1901, he died. The president's assassin was Leon F. Czolgosz. Leon F. Czolgosz. Assassin of President McKinley, a madman by the name of Leon F. Czolgosz. Czolgosz was later tried and electrocuted for the murder of President McKinley. He was later tried and electrocuted for the murder of President McKinley. Vice President Theodore Roosevelt then made his way to Buffalo, shortly after the president had died and was sworn in Buffalo, New York, as the President of the United States. So Vice President Theodore Roosevelt made his way to Buffalo shortly after the president had died, and in Buffalo was sworn in as President of the United States. As a result of his swearing in, Theodore Roosevelt became the youngest man ever to be President of the United States at the age of 42. Became the youngest man ever served as President of the United States at the age of 42. So as a result of his swearing in, Theodore Roosevelt became the youngest man ever to hold the office of President of the United States at 42. Who was the youngest man ever elected President of the United States? John F. Kennedy. Yep, John F. Kennedy. So John F. Kennedy was not the youngest president ever. He was the youngest one elected. Theodore Roosevelt was the youngest man to hold the office. Kennedy was 43 when he was elected. President McKinley was laid to rest in Canton, Ohio. Anybody know the significance of Canton, Ohio today? It has been for quite a few years. It is the home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Canton, Ohio. So President McKinley was laid to rest in Canton, Ohio. Now, many Republicans after the death of McKinley were very unhappy with the new President of the United States. You know why they pushed so hard to get him to be the vice presidential nominee with McKinley? Yeah, sort of. They didn't want him in active politics. They didn't want him to be the Republican governor of New York, because he actually had more power as the Republican governor of New York than he would have as vice president. They actually encouraged him to be vice president to keep him out of active politics. Okay? That's a bad thing. Lyndon Johnson, who served under Kennedy, was miserable. The most miserable years of his life were when he was vice president of the United States, because he went from Senate Majority Leader, the head man of the Senate, to vice president. If you look at history, it was the most miserable time of his life. He was second fiddle to a lot less experienced man than John Kennedy. He was miserable. The vice presidency, some say, might be the closest thing to falling off the face of the earth politically. So the Republicans were shocked when McKinley was assassinated, because the guy they absolutely did not want in politics was now the President of the United States. It was kind of interesting, because one man predicted this. One prominent Republican leader after the election of Roosevelt as vice president, one actually said to his friend, "Don't any of you realize that there is only one life between that madman and the White House?" That's what one prominent Republican said after McKinley was reelected and Theodore Roosevelt became his vice president. So there were some people thinking, ooh, maybe this wasn't a good idea. But they were willing to take the chance to keep him out of politics. What they got was quite the opposite. Okay? So, we'll give you a little profile on Franklin Roosevelt. Or Theodore, what's that? Quote again? Yeah. He said, "Don't any of you realize that there is only one life between that madman and the White House?" I'll read that again if you want to write it down. "Don't any of you realize that there is only one life between that madman and the White House?" Okay, let's see what we got left here. We're not going to lecture tomorrow, so we'll go a little bit here. Profile of President Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was born in New York City on October 27, 1858. He was born in New York City on October 27, 1858. He was the second of 4 children that were born to the Roosevelt family. Second of 4 children. Now, the Roosevelt family was considered well-to-do. His father was a glass importer, and they were pretty wealthy family. And when he was growing up, Theodore Roosevelt was known for his great energy and his great curiosity and his determination, but he was not a very big kid. And not only was he not a very big kid, he had asthma, he was very nearsighted, which resulted in him having glasses at a very early age, which kind of labeled him as a what, in a way? A kind of a nerdy kid, yeah. He wasn't very big, he had asthma, a little bit wimpy, had glasses, just had the look of a nerd, so to speak, I guess in today's terms. Well, Theodore Roosevelt's father realized if you're going to survive, you're going to have a strong body and mind, and I'm going to have to find a way for you to develop fully, because otherwise you're going to have a pretty rough road. Dad could figure out where this was going when he looked at his son. And so, when he was 13 years old, Roosevelt was bullied or tormented by two boys, and he felt so ashamed because he was not big enough to fight back. And his father figured out, we got to get something going here. This kid's going to have a long life. You know, he's kind of a short, skinny little guy. He's got asthma. He's nearsighted, can't see very good without his glasses. He's going to get picked on his whole life if we don't get this figured out. So after that incident in which his son was picked on, Theodore Roosevelt didn't run to the school and complain and expect action. He built a gymnasium in the family house and said, let's get after it. So that's what he did. So Roosevelt's father built him a gymnasium in the family home. Roosevelt worked out, overcame his asthma, and he built up what was considered unusual physical strength for a person his size. And he had very little problems with anybody after that. So after his little incident, his father decided, we'll fix this. We'll build a gymnasium in the family home. He worked very hard, Theodore Roosevelt did, to overcome his asthma. He built up what was considered an unusual physical strength because of it, and survived quite handsomely through high school. Well, after he graduated from high school, he entered Harvard University at the age of 18. Very bright. So after high school, he enrolled and entered at Harvard University at the age of 18. That was 1876 when he walked through the doors of Harvard University, just 18 years old. 3 years later, while he was at Harvard, he met a young lady by the name of Alice Lee. So while he was at Harvard University, 3 years later in 1879, he meets Alice Lee. And she is the daughter of a very wealthy Bostonian who owned an investment firm. So unlike Mrs. Durr, he was looking to marry for money. What are you laughing at, Paige? Well, 1 year later, in 1880, on Theodore's 22nd birthday, the couple were married. So in October of 1879, he meets Alice Lee, the daughter of a wealthy Bostonian who owned his own investment firm. A year later, on Theodore Roosevelt's 22nd birthday, the couple were married. Now, he graduated from Harvard in 1880, and to be honest with you, he wasn't even sure what he wanted to do with his life. Now, you'd think if you graduated from Harvard, you'd have some sort of an idea what you're going to do. He just really didn't. He had a prestigious degree, but nothing he really wanted to do. And he first thought he might want to be a lawyer, so he enrolled at Columbia University Law School. But the courses didn't interest him. So he decided to try politics. Okay? So, after he graduated from Harvard in 1880, he was unsure what to do with his life. Thought he might want to be a lawyer, so he enrolled at Columbia University Law School. Courses didn't interest him, so he decided at that time to enter politics. And he joined the Republican Party. In the fall of 1881, he was just 23 years old. He won his first political position in the New York State Assembly. What's the New York State Assembly? Who's in the Wyoming State Assembly that you might know from Moreland? Who's in the Wyoming State Assembly, in the legislature? Mike Greer. Very good. Okay, that's kind of the position that Roosevelt held, his first political position. Well, on February 14th, that's what day, girls? On February 14th, 1884, Roosevelt faced a double tragedy in his life on Valentine's Day. February 14th, 1884, Theodore Roosevelt faced a double tragedy in his life. On that same day, his mother died of typhoid fever. His mother died of typhoid fever. So listen, don't write this down so much yet. On February 12th, his wife had given birth to a daughter. Unfortunately, on February 14th, 2 days later, his wife died. So he lost his wife and his mother on February 14th, 1884. Both his wife and his mother died in the same house, just hours apart. Now, what's a big issue that he's had to have to overcome now? Raising a child. Now, this isn't like today, because no offense, but women did it all in those days. You didn't have single-parent fathers in those days. They had no idea. So what Roosevelt did is, after the death of his wife and mother, he left his daughter, whom he named Alice, in the care of his sister. Okay? So after the death of his wife and mother, Roosevelt left his daughter, whom they named Alice, in the care of his sister. And he was distraught. He left politics and just went to the American West. He just went west, young man. And you know what he did west? He ran 2 cattle ranches on the Missouri River in the Dakota Territory. He just was distraught. So he left his newborn daughter Alice with his sister, and he just went to the American West. And for a period of time, he ran 2 cattle ranches on the Missouri River in the Dakota Territory. Roosevelt was a very avid writer. He wrote 2 books in his life. He wrote one book, which was a biography of Senator Thomas Hart Benton of Missouri. We've talked about him before, right? He wrote one book on a biography of Senator Thomas Hart Benton of Missouri. And then he wrote a 4-volume series known as The Winning of the West. So he was an avid reader and writer. He wrote 2 different books. He wrote a biography on Thomas Hart Benton, and he wrote a 4-volume series called The Winning of the West. Gee, look at this. Jacqueline, here's your Thomas Benton biography. And here are your 4-volume series, first edition, first printing, Garden with Your Life, of The Winning of the West. You can look those over as we finish with them. Okay? That's it. Tomorrow we'll continue on with nothing. Kellyanna and Brady and I will be in the guidance office probably. Maybe I'll buy you guys lunch tomorrow. What do you think? You want lunch tomorrow, Rasmussen? Okay.